15 sailors received the Medal of Honor for their actions at Pearl Harbor. Not one of them was black. This is the story America tried to forget. His name was Doris Miller. The Navy called him a cook. History would call him a hero. But for 80 years, America called him nothing at all. December 7th, 1941. A black mess attendant would do something no one trained him to do. He would fight back against the enemy. But before we get to that moment, you need to understand who Doris Miller was and why the Navy did not want you to know his name. Miller was born October 12, 1919, in Waco, Texas. His family were sharecroppers, working land they would never own. The Great Depression hit Texas hard. Miller's family struggled to survive. He was the third of 4 sons, all of them working just to eat. Miller helped around the house. He cooked meals. He did laundry, skills that would define his entire military career, whether he liked it or not. He dropped out of school to help support his family. In 1930s Texas, this was common for young black men with few options. In September 1939, Miller enlisted in the United States Navy at Dallas, Texas. He wanted to see the world. He wanted to send money home. But this was the Navy of 1939, and Miller was black. That meant only one thing. He could cook. He could clean. Nothing else. Black sailors in the Navy were restricted to one job only: mess attendant. They served food, they washed dishes, they were invisible. They received no combat training. They were not allowed to touch weapons. Their ceiling was the kitchen. Their future was decided before they arrived. In January 1940, Miller was assigned to the battleship USS West Virginia, one of the mightiest warships in the United States Pacific Fleet. On the West Virginia, Miller found one thing he could control: boxing. He became the ship's heavyweight champion. Strength no one could take away. That physical power would matter soon, more than anyone could have predicted, more than the Navy ever wanted to admit. Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, home of the United States Pacific Fleet. 8 battleships anchored along what they called Battleship Row. By late 1941, tensions between America and Japan had reached a breaking point. The United States had cut off oil and steel to Japan, but no one in Hawaii expected an attack. Pearl Harbor was too far from Japan, too well defended, too American to ever be touched. The USS West Virginia sat at Battleship Row, moored alongside the USS Tennessee. Over 1,500 sailors called her home. Her captain was Mervyn Bennion, a respected officer, a man who led by example. He would die on his bridge that Sunday morning. And somewhere below deck, Doris Miller had a job to do: laundry, uniforms, the work of a mess attendant. The only work they would let him do: December 7th, 1941, 6 in the morning. 353 Japanese planes prepared to launch from 6 aircraft carriers, fighters, bombers, torpedo planes. The largest air attack in Pacific history was about to begin. Pearl Harbor had no idea what was coming. 7:48 in the morning. The first bombs fell on Ford Island. Explosions echoed across the harbor. The attack had begun. Below deck on the West Virginia, Doris Miller was collecting laundry. The alarm sounded. General quarters, battle stations. This was not a drill. Miller ran to his assigned battle station, but a torpedo had already destroyed it. He had nowhere to go, no weapon to use, no training for this. So he did what any sailor would do. He found someone giving orders, and he followed them into the chaos, into the fire. 7:55 in the morning. 2 torpedoes slammed into the port side of the West Virginia. The ship shuddered, then 2 more hit, then 3 more. 7 torpedoes in total ripped into the battleship. Water poured in, oil caught fire. The West Virginia began to sink. And then the Arizona exploded. The battleship next to them erupted in a fireball. Over 1,100 sailors died in seconds. Shrapnel flew everywhere. A massive piece of metal from the Arizona flew across the water. It hit Captain Bennion in the stomach. The captain collapsed on the bridge. Blood pooled beneath him, but he refused to leave his post. He kept giving orders as he lay dying. Someone needed to move the captain to safety. They called for the strongest man available. That man was Doris Miller. Miller climbed to the bridge, bombs falling, planes strafing, oil burning everywhere. He saw his captain lying in a pool of his own blood. The order came simple and clear. Move the captain somewhere safer. Miller lifted Bennion onto his shoulders, all 200 pounds of him. Through fire and smoke, Miller carried his wounded captain across the burning deck, through the chaos, to a spot with some protection. Bennion refused to abandon ship. He would die on that bridge, and he would later receive the Medal of Honor, posthumously. Miller had done his job. He had moved the captain. He could have stopped there. No one would have blamed him. He was just a cook. But there was a gun, a .50 caliber Browning anti-aircraft machine gun. It sat unmanned. The sailor operating it had been wounded. An officer pointed at Miller, then pointed at the gun. Load the ammunition. Help the gunner. Do something useful. Miller had never been trained on this weapon. Black sailors were not allowed weapons training. The Navy did not trust them with guns. But Miller had watched. He had observed. He knew basically how the gun worked, and there was no one else left to operate it. The officer who was supposed to fire was down, so Miller did not just load the ammunition. He stepped behind the gun himself, a black mess attendant, a man forbidden from touching weapons. He grabbed the handles and pointed the barrel at the Japanese planes above. And Doris Miller began to fire into the smoke, into the chaos, into the swarm of enemy aircraft attacking his ship and his country. He had no training. He had no authorization. He had nothing but instinct and rage, and the need to do something, anything at all. According to official Navy records, Miller shot down one Japanese aircraft that morning, but Miller and other witnesses told a different story. They said he hit 4 planes, maybe more. Some said 6. The exact number was never confirmed, but everyone agreed he fought. Miller kept firing until the ammunition ran out. He kept firing until they ordered him to abandon ship. The West Virginia was going down. Miller swam through water, covered in burning oil, past the bodies of his shipmates, past the wreckage of the American fleet. He survived. 106 of his crewmates on the West Virginia did not. By 9:30 that morning, the attack was over. 2,403 Americans were dead. The United States would declare war on Japan the next day. Nothing would be the same. In the days after Pearl Harbor, the Navy began naming heroes. Men who fought back. Men who saved lives. Men who deserved recognition. December 15th, 1941. The Navy released its official commendation list. Names of sailors who showed extraordinary bravery. On that list was one curious entry. An unnamed Negro. That is how they described him. No name, no rank, just an unnamed Negro. White sailors were identified by name. Their stories were told. Their families were notified. But the black hero remained anonymous. For 3 months, America did not know the name of the black sailor who fought back at Pearl Harbor. The Navy did not want them to know. Then the black press got involved. The Pittsburgh Courier, the largest black newspaper in America, started asking questions. Lawrence Reddick from the Schomburg Center in Harlem wrote directly to the Navy. Who was this unnamed Negro? Why was his name being hidden? March 1942. Under pressure, the Navy finally revealed the truth. His name was Doris Miller, and his story was remarkable. The Pittsburgh Courier put Miller on the front page. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People demanded recognition. A campaign began to award Miller the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration in the United States. He had earned it, they said. The Navy said no. The Medal of Honor was not appropriate, they claimed. The Navy Cross would be sufficient for someone like Miller. May 11, 1942. President Franklin Roosevelt approved the Navy Cross for Doris Miller, the third highest naval honor. May 27, 1942. Admiral Chester Nimitz personally pinned the medal on Miller's chest on the deck of the USS Enterprise. Nimitz said something that day. This marks the first time a member of his race has received such high tribute in the Pacific Fleet. The first time. In the entire Pacific Fleet. Let that sink in. Miller was a pioneer simply for being recognized at all. Miller was promoted after the ceremony. His new rank was Mess Attendant First Class. He was still a cook, still serving food. In July 1942, the Pittsburgh Courier published 2 photographs side by side. The contrast told the whole story. On the left, a white Pearl Harbor survivor. He had just been promoted to officer. On the right, Doris Miller. Still holding a mop, the headline read simply, "He fought, keeps mop." 8 words that captured the bitter reality of being black in the American military. Late 1942, the Navy needed to sell war bonds. They put Miller on a speaking tour. The first black sailor allowed to participate. In 1943, the Navy released a recruitment poster featuring Miller above and beyond the call of duty. His face on walls nationwide, but when the tour ended, Miller went back to his regular duties. Cooking, cleaning, serving, the hero returned to invisibility. May 1943. Miller was assigned to a new ship, the escort carrier USS Liscum Bay. He was promoted to cook third class. The Liscum Bay was a small carrier, built quickly for the war. Escort carriers had a reputation among sailors: combustible, vulnerable, expendable. November 1943. The Liscum Bay joined Operation Galvanic, the invasion of the Gilbert Islands, Miller's first major combat deployment. November 24, 1943, 5:10 in the morning. The day before Thanksgiving, the crew was preparing for the holiday. Somewhere in the Pacific, a Japanese submarine called I-175 had found the American fleet. Its commander prepared to fire. A torpedo streaked through the dark water. It struck the Liscum Bay directly in her bomb storage compartment. The worst possible hit. The ship exploded. Aircraft bombs detonated in a chain reaction. A fireball rose hundreds of feet into the air. The Liscum Bay sank in 23 minutes. She took 644 sailors down with her, the deadliest carrier loss in Navy history. Among the dead was Cook Third Class Doris Miller. He was 24 years old. He never saw the end of the war he helped start. Miller's parents received notification that their son was missing in action. The telegram arrived on December 7, 1943. Exactly 2 years after Pearl Harbor. The same date their son had become a hero. Now the same date they learned he was gone. The Navy officially declared Miller dead 1 year later, November 25, 1944. His body was never recovered. For decades, Doris Miller faded from American memory. Textbooks rarely mentioned him. Movies ignored him. History moved on without him. But slowly, recognition began to come. In 1973, the Navy commissioned a frigate named USS Miller in his honor. In 2010, the United States Postal Service issued a 44-cent stamp featuring Miller's face, a small acknowledgement of a great debt In 2014, the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Waco, Texas was renamed. It now bears the name of its hometown hero. January 2020 brought the biggest honor yet. The Navy announced that its newest aircraft carrier would be named USS Doris Miller. The USS Doris Miller will be the first aircraft carrier named after an enlisted sailor. Not an admiral, not a president, an enlisted man. It is also the first carrier named after an African American, the first named after someone who started as a mess attendant. And still, the campaign continues. Multiple bills have been introduced in Congress to award Miller the Medal of Honor posthumously. The argument is simple. 15 sailors received the Medal of Honor for actions at Pearl Harbor that day. Not one was black. Miller did what many of them did. He showed courage under fire. He saved lives. He fought the enemy without hesitation. The only difference was his skin color, and in 1941, that made all the difference in the world. As of today, Doris Miller has still not received the Medal of Honor. The Navy Cross remains his highest decoration, but his legacy lives on in ways the 1941 Navy never imagined, in the ship that will carry his name into the future. Miller proved something that December morning in Pearl Harbor. Heroes do not need permission. They do not need training. They need opportunity. When given the chance to fight, Miller fought. When given the chance to lead, he led. When given nothing, he still gave everything. The Navy tried to make him invisible. They called him an unnamed Negro. They gave him a mop instead of a medal. But you cannot erase courage, you cannot silence sacrifice, and you cannot forget a man who refused to be forgotten. Doris Miller was 22 years old when he manned that gun at Pearl Harbor, 24 when he died defending his country. In his short life, he changed the conversation about who could be an American hero, about who deserved recognition, about who mattered. Today, the USS Doris Miller is being built, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, one of the most powerful warships ever constructed. It will sail the oceans, carrying the name of a man who was once told he could only wash dishes and fold laundry. 15 men received the Medal of Honor for Pearl Harbor. 0 of them were black. History decided who mattered. But Doris Miller's story refuses to stay buried. Because some heroes are too important to forget. Some stories must be told. The question remains, how many other Doris Millers are out there? How many heroes did history choose to erase? And who will tell their stories?